I still remember the moment the first crack appeared, not in our marriage, but in the mask she wore so well. It was a Tuesday, not the kind of day you'd expect your life to shift. Tuesdays are for paying bills, fixing loose hinges, and debating whether the milk's gone bad. But that Tuesday was the day I realized my wife wasn't mine anymore. I was folding laundry in the downstairs den, her silk blouses mixed with my old flannel shirts, the comfortable chaos of 2 decades together. She walked in, humming that tuneless little hum she does when she's pleased with herself. Without looking at me, she tossed a blouse into the dryer and said, "You're lucky I even let you touch me." No build-up, no argument leading to it. Just a casual, cold-blooded drop like we were talking about the weather. I froze for maybe half a second, towel in hand. Then I kept folding. Slowly, deliberately. Not because I wasn't hurt. I was. But because I wasn't going to give her the theater she clearly wanted. This was the same woman I had covered for when she accidentally overspent our joint account into oblivion. The same woman whose car I fixed at midnight, whose mother I chauffeured to every medical appointment, whose business cards I designed for free because she couldn't find a graphic designer she liked. And now I was a charity case. She let touch her? She didn't notice I'd gone quiet. Or maybe she did and enjoyed it. She walked off, phone buzzing in her hand. I caught the faintest giggle, that tone she only used lately when texting whoever she thought was her little secret. I finished folding the laundry and stacked it neatly. That old t-shirt from the state fair, the one from before her designer handbags, before her Pilates instructor with the silly nickname, ended up on top of the pile. I carried it to the hallway, past the mirror, and looked at myself. Sure, I had more lines on my face. Maybe moved slower than I used to. But I was still the man who could run a project team with surgical precision, still the guy who could fix a titanium lathe to within half a human hair. I wasn't some worn-out extra in her movie. In that mirror, I didn't see a victim. I saw a man taking inventory. And I decided right there. She wanted to play? Fine. But I'd be the one writing the ending. That night, I didn't go to bed. I waited until the house went quiet. Her breathing slow, tablet slipping from her hands, some boring podcast about real estate trends playing on repeat. In the office downstairs, I opened the bottom drawer. Inside was a small oak box I'd carved myself after I retired. It was supposed to hold cufflinks. Instead, it had been waiting for something more useful: truth. I set it on the desk, opened it, and got to work. Months earlier, I'd quietly synced her phone to the family iPad. She thought it was just for Netflix in the guest room. She never realized that every text she sent, every photo she received, quietly flowed into my hands like a river feeding a reservoir. The first set of evidence was almost lazy in how careless it was. A thread with a contact in the industry, actually a contractor we'd hired once to fix our deck. He'd sent her a shirtless mirror selfie from a hotel bathroom. The wallpaper in the background? I recognized it instantly. The Burstone Hotel. The same place she'd told me she was stuck in a board meeting. Her reply to him: "Can't wait to see you outside the sheets for once, LOL." The timestamp said 1:42 p.m. That day, she'd texted me she was in a strategy session that might run late. I didn't get angry. I organized. Emails from a realtor friend named Celeste, coordinating weekends in Ridge Hill that suspiciously aligned with her training retreats. Rental car receipts in her name, with a second driver listed. Not me. I saved everything to a USB drive labeled June Justice. Encrypted, backed up 3 times, 1 copy offsite. Because men like me don't gamble with ammo. And as I read, her words echoed back to me from earlier. "You're lucky I even let you touch me." She thought she was running a game. But games have rules. And I was about to change them. 2 days later, she gave me that look across the breakfast table. The one where her eyes are smiling, but her brain is rifling through your pockets. "So, what have you been working on in your little office lately?" she asked, stirring her coffee like she was making small talk. I didn't look up from my toast. "Taxes." She chuckled. "It's August." I shrugged. Getting ahead. That was the first flicker. She couldn't see what I was doing, and it made her itch. People like her thrive on knowing everything that matters to them. And right now, I mattered in a way she couldn't measure. That afternoon, I moved my first piece. Not in the marriage, in the finances. Over the years, she'd gotten used to having me as the safety net. Car payments, credit cards, the time her business venture bled red for 18 months straight. I covered it all. Quietly. Without asking questions. Now, I quietly called the bank, revoked her access to our joint savings, and moved half into a trust under my name only. The other half went into an account she didn't even know existed. The trust had one beneficiary, me. That night, she came home later than usual, smelling faintly of the Burstone's lavender lobby spray. She leaned in the kitchen doorway, glass of wine in hand, all relaxed charm. "You seem quiet lately." "Do I?" I asked. She nodded. "It's not a bad thing. I just notice." I smiled at her. Slow, unbothered. The kind of smile that makes people wonder what you know. "Good. Keep noticing." She tilted her head, trying to read me. She didn't realize I was already holding more of the truth than she could imagine, and now I was taking away the ground she thought she stood on. Thought it's a strange thing. Watching someone walk straight into a trap you've set, completely convinced they're the one in control. It's like seeing a cat stalk a bird, unaware the bird is just a mechanical decoy wired to a spring-loaded net. That Friday evening, she came home wearing the dress, the red one that had been retired to the back of the closet years ago because, according to her, it doesn't feel like me anymore. I knew what that meant. It meant him. She waltzed in like a woman stepping off the stage of her own movie. Hairstyled, lipstick sharp, shoes clicking on the tile. "Big night?" I asked without looking up from the news on my laptop. She smirked. "Drinks with Celeste. You know, catching up, a little girl talk." Celeste, the same Celeste whose emails I had archived, the same one booking rooms under weekend retreats. I nodded. "Tell her I said hi." The smirk faltered for half a second. That was the thing about her. She was quick, but not quick enough to cover every micro-expression. She'd heard the undertone in my voice, the subtle, "I know something you don't want me to know." She left the house 10 minutes later, heels tapping a rhythm that was just a shade too fast. And that's when I made my second move. I walked into the garage, pulled down the storage bin labeled Christmas Decor, and lifted the false bottom. Beneath the tangle of lights and old tinsel was a small fireproof safe. Inside, the flash drive, 2 spare phones, and a prepaid debit card I'd been quietly loading for months. I took one of the spare phones, turned it on, and opened the tracker app. There she was. Burstone Hotel, Suite 614. I didn't go there. Not yet. I didn't need the satisfaction of catching her in the act. I already had enough to burn the whole thing down. But timing was everything. Instead, I drove to a quiet parking lot 2 blocks away, opened my laptop, and uploaded the latest batch of screenshots to my encrypted cloud. One folder labeled personal, the other labeled legal. The difference between the two? Personal was the one I'd keep. Legal was the one my lawyer would see. At 9:47 p.m., the tracker showed her leaving the hotel. At 9:53, she texted me. "Still with Celeste. Might be late. Don't wait up, Red Heart." I didn't reply. She needed silence. Silence makes liars sweat more than shouting ever could. By the time she walked in at 11:20, her lipstick was faded, hair slightly out of place, and there was that faint trace of lavender again. She tossed her bag on the counter and opened the fridge. "Hungry?" I asked. She shook her head, avoiding my eyes. "Just tired." And here's the beauty of it. Instead of cornering her, instead of confronting her, I let her believe the performance was working. That's the fastest way to make someone overplay their hand. Over the next week, I did everything the same. Made her coffee in the morning, kissed her cheek on the way out the door, listened with what looked like interest when she talked about her client meetings. But behind the scenes, I was pulling threads. First, I called my lawyer, Marcus, a man who could carve up an opposing party without ever raising his voice. I told him to move forward with the paperwork we discussed months ago, back when I first noticed the changes. He said it would be clean, fast, and airtight. Second, I made a quiet visit to our financial advisor. We shifted several investments out of joint status, citing liquidity needs for a potential business venture. He didn't ask questions. Third, I made friends with the Burstone's night clerk, a bored 20-something who barely looked up from his phone. I told him I was putting together a surprise anniversary slideshow and wanted to confirm some dates. A $100 bill later, I had printouts of every check-in she'd made in the last 4 months. Every single one. When I came home that night, she was in the kitchen scrolling through her phone, wine glass half empty. She looked up and smiled, that lazy, practiced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes anymore. "You're home early," she said. "Thought I'd surprise you," I replied. She tilted her head. "Sweet. but I've got some work to finish up. Translation, she had somewhere else to be later. And here's where I set the hook deeper. No problem. I've got a project of my own to work on. She didn't ask what it was. She didn't care. That was fine. The less she cared, the easier it would be to blindside her when the time came. The following Saturday, she made her move, or what she thought was hers. Over breakfast, she casually mentioned she might take a weekend retreat with Celeste next month. Oh, where to? I asked. She hesitated. Ridge Hill. You know, that cute little place we went years ago. The one with the overpriced wine bar and the boutique hotel rooms. The same one in Celeste's emails. I smiled. Sounds fun. You deserve it. And just like that, she relaxed. She thought I'd bought the lie. She thought she was winning. But I wasn't just holding the cards now. I was stacking the deck. That afternoon, I went to see Marcus again. We finalized the timing. On the second day of her retreat, she'd get the papers delivered to her hotel room, along with copies of every photo, every message, every receipt. It wouldn't be public, not yet. That part would come later. For now, I needed her to keep thinking she was untouchable. The higher she climbed, the harder the fall. So for the next 2 weeks, I became the perfect husband again. Dinners, flowers, even a spontaneous date night that she accepted with wide-eyed surprise. I listened. I laughed at her jokes. I let her believe the air was clear. And all the while, the oak box on my desk grew heavier. By the night before her trip, it was full: documents, printouts, USB drives, and one handwritten note on top. You're lucky I let you lie this long. She left the next morning in that same red dress. She kissed me on the cheek, told me to behave while I'm gone, and rolled her suitcase out the door. I stood in the kitchen, coffee in hand, watching her taillights disappear down the street. She thought she was walking into another weekend of lavender-scented lies. What she didn't know was that the moment she checked in, the countdown would start, and this time, I was the one holding the timer. The thing about revenge is, if you've done it right, there's no drumroll, no ominous soundtrack, no warning shot across the bow. It just happens. Quietly. Completely. By the time she checked into the Ridge Hill in that Friday afternoon, the game was already over. She just didn't know she'd been playing on my board the entire time. I watched it from my laptop in the study. The tracker app pinged at 3:17 p.m., room 204. Not the suite she'd told me she booked. No, this was a double occupancy, one king bed. Subtle as a billboard. At 3:22 p.m., she texted me. Made it. Celeste and I are going to the wine bar. Love you, Red Heart. I typed back, have fun. It was almost polite. Almost. While she clinked glasses and played the innocent wife on a girl's weekend, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to Marcus. He confirmed the courier was on schedule, papers printed, signed, and packaged in a neat leather folder. Not a beige manila envelope. No, this was going to be presented like a luxury gift, because optics matter. The second was to the Ridge Hill front desk. My new friend there, another underpaid 20-something, assured me the anniversary gift would be delivered to room 204 precisely at 6 p.m. The champagne? Non-alcoholic. The strawberries? Fresh. The paperwork inside the decorative box? Nuclear. The third call was to the photographer. Yeah, I'd gone that far. Hired a local shooter who specialized in candid lifestyle moments. Code for being invisible while catching people exactly as they are. She'd been briefed to stake out the lobby bar, the hallway outside 204, and the patio where my wife liked to post her weekend vibes selfies. By 5:58, I was in my office with a drink, watching the feed. 6 p.m. sharp, a knock on her hotel door. 6:02. She opens it, robe tied loose, hair damp. Standing beside her, him. The contractor from the Burstone. Wearing the kind of smug half grin that made me wish this was a different kind of story, one where I could settle it with a single swing. The bellhop hands her the box. She laughs, probably assuming it's from him. She sets it on the bed, unties the bow, and lifts the lid. I wish I could have seen her face in person. The note on top. The divorce petition underneath. The USB drive. The color photos, time-stamped, geotagged, irrefutable. She froze. He leaned over, curious. The smirk faded in real time. And then she made the rookie mistake. She called me. A gift. I answered, calm as the Dead Sea. Her voice was sharp, frantic. What the hell is this, Michael? Documentation, I said, of why you're about to have a very different weekend than you planned. You hired someone to follow me? No, I hired someone to see you. There's a difference. And the papers? Those are the official start of your new life. Don't worry, you get to keep the dress. Everything else? Not so much. You can't just. I can't. I cut in. And I already have. Your access to the accounts is gone. The joint credit cards? Cancelled. The house? Already in my name alone. Oh, and the car? Technically leased under my business. I'll need that back Monday. Dead silence on the line. I could almost hear her recalculating, trying to find a single lever left to pull. You're pathetic, she finally spat. I smiled into the receiver. And you're evicted. Enjoy your champagne. I hung up. The next part was theater. And theater, when done right, leaves no question about the ending. At 7:15 p.m., my photographer texted me the money shot. Her, storming out of the hotel lobby in that red dress, dragging her suitcase behind her while he trailed after her looking like a man who'd just realized the free ride had ended. By 7:45, the images were backed up in both my personal and legal folders. By 8 o'clock, a curated selection, nothing obscene, just enough implication, was in the hands of two people, Celeste, because traitors deserve each other, and her mother, because a little shame from home never hurt my cause. At 8:30, I sat in my kitchen, pouring another drink, when the doorbell rang. She stood there, makeup smudged, suitcase parked beside her. We need to talk, she said. I leaned against the doorframe. About what? The weather? Your impressive hotel loyalty program. This is my house, she snapped. Not anymore. I pulled a folded document from my pocket and handed it to her. The emergency court order granting me temporary exclusive possession of the property, pending divorce proceedings. She skimmed it, color draining from her face. You're serious. I've never been more serious. You can come back in 3 weeks with a police escort to collect whatever's left in your closet. Until then, you're trespassing. She looked at me like she was seeing a stranger. Which was fair. She'd never met this version of me. You planned this, she whispered. For months, I said. You just never noticed. Too busy planning your weekends. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she grabbed her suitcase handle, wheeled it back down the porch, and got into the Uber waiting at the curb. I closed the door, locked it, and felt the quiet settle over the house like fresh snow. The beauty of the plan wasn't just in ending it cleanly. It was in making sure she understood she'd never been ahead of me. Not for a second. The next morning, I emailed my lawyer the final set of attachments. He replied within the hour. This will be over quickly. She has no leverage. No leverage, no access, no audience. Just her and the echo of every smug little laugh she'd thrown my way, now ricocheting back at her. I didn't celebrate. There was no victory dance. Just the steady satisfaction of a man who played the long game and won. And somewhere in a hotel trash can, I imagined a crumpled red dress, the one she thought made her dangerous, sitting on top of a decorative box, empty now except for the faint scent of champagne and the note she'll never stop thinking about. You're lucky I let you lie this long that you'd think a clean hit like that would end it. The papers served, the accounts locked, her suitcase dragged down my driveway like a dog that wouldn't come when called. Any sane person would have limped away, licked their wounds, and tried to rebuild somewhere else. But Vanessa, yeah, let's stop pretending she's my wife now, wasn't sane in the way most people mean it. She was strategic, entitled, and worst of all, she thought shame was just a temporary inconvenience. 2 weeks after the Ridge Hill checkmate, she made her last move. It started on a Tuesday morning. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, my lawyer. Heads up, she's filed an emergency petition claiming you've been financially abusive and are attempting to leave her destitute. I actually laughed. Out loud. Alone in my kitchen, coffee in hand. I laughed like someone had just told me they were going to sue the sun for rising in the east. I called Marcus immediately. She's trying to play the sympathy card? Not just sympathy, he said, voice dry. She's alleging you diverted marital funds into offshore accounts to avoid equitable distribution. I smiled into my mug. Oh, she's going to regret putting that in writing. Because here's the thing. The accounts she was hinting at weren't offshore. They were right here, domestic and legal, tied entirely to my premarital assets. But if she wanted to open that box in court, fine. I'd make sure everything inside exploded in her face. Marcus and I set a court date. That gave me 5 days to prepare. Day 1, I visited the bank in person. I requested certified statements for every transfer I'd made in the last 6 months. Then I had the manager sign a notarized affidavit confirming that the accounts in question were in my name alone, funded exclusively from income earned before the marriage. Day 2. I met with my accountant. We went line by line through every tax return from the last 10 years, marking which deductions had benefited her businesses, which debts I'd paid off on her behalf, and, my favorite, the amount of personal spending she'd charged to my accounts under the guise of business expenses. Day 3. I drove to the Burstone Hotel with a manila folder. Inside, copies of every room booking in her name or her contractor boyfriend's, tied neatly to dates she'd claimed were corporate events. I didn't need the hotel's cooperation. I already had the receipts. I just wanted the desk manager to confirm the authenticity with a signed statement. She did. Day 4. I called in a favor from a mutual acquaintance of ours, a realtor who had attended one of those girls' weekends Vanessa always claimed were innocent. She agreed to provide a written statement that the weekends had nothing to do with business networking and everything to do with what she called wine and bad decisions. Day 5. I rested, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to walk into that courtroom calm. She'd come in swinging. I'd come in smiling. Judges remember that contrast. The morning of the hearing, Vanessa showed up in a cream suit that probably cost more than my first car. She had the expression of someone already tasting victory. That polite, almost bored half-smile she used to wear when the neighbors complimented her garden even though I'd done all the planting. Her lawyer started strong. "Your Honor, my client has been left without access to marital funds. She has been cut off from accounts she reasonably believed were jointly held, and evidence suggests that Mr. Carter has been moving assets out of reach to deprive her of her fair share." The judge turned to me. "Mr. Carter?" I stood, hands clasped behind my back, and nodded toward Marcus. He slid 3 thick binders onto the table. "Your Honor," I began, "I have here full statements for every account in question, all verified by the issuing banks. They show the funds were from premarital assets, never commingled, and have been in my name alone since their inception. I've also included 10 years of tax records demonstrating that, if anything, my financial contributions far exceeded any reasonable expectation of spousal support during our marriage." I gestured to the second binder. "This contains receipts, hotel invoices, and corroborating witness statements that my wife used joint funds for personal trips unrelated to her claimed business activities." Then I placed my hand on the third binder, the one with the little red tab sticking out the side. "And this," I said, "is a detailed record of every debt in her name that I paid over the last 5 years, including a $27,000 credit card balance that was the result of luxury purchases made entirely without my knowledge." Her lawyer tried to object, but the judge waved him down. "Continue." I opened the red-tabbed section and slid a single photograph across to the clerk, one of the Ridge Hill delivery. Vanessa, standing in her robe next to the contractor, both staring down at the open box on the bed. The timestamp and location data were clear in the corner. "I include this not to embarrass anyone," I said evenly, "but to illustrate that the emergency petition before this court is not about financial survival. It is about leverage, and my refusal to be extorted." The judge didn't even glance at Vanessa when she ruled. "Petition denied. Mr. Carter, you may recover court costs from the petitioner." Vanessa's mouth tightened, but she didn't look at me as she gathered her papers. The Real Beauty came after. As we left the courtroom, she turned to me in the hallway. "You think you've won, don't you?" she hissed. I leaned in just enough for only her to hear. "No, Vanessa. I know I have. And the best part? I'm still one move ahead." Because while she'd been busy trying to use the courts to bleed me, I'd been busy finalizing something else entirely, a little agreement with the contractor. See, he hadn't been too thrilled when he found out she'd been seeing more than just him on those retreats. Men like him don't take kindly to being played. And men like me know how to make that kind of bruised ego useful. 2 signed affidavits from him and another weekend companion were already sitting in Marcus's inbox. They weren't for court. Not yet. They were insurance, the kind you cash in when someone decides they want to make your life noisy again. That night, the house was silent. I poured myself a drink, walked to the oak box in my office, and dropped the day's court order inside. The lid closed with a soft click. I thought about her cream suit, her smug smile, the way she still believed in her own invincibility. And I thought about the next time she'd try something. Because she would. People like her can't walk away without trying to claw back a little ground. But now she knew. Every time she moved, I'd already be there, waiting. And when she finally realized that, that's when the real end would come. It took her 3 weeks to make her next move. 3 weeks of public silence, but private whispers. I started noticing it when the neighbor across the street, the one who used to wave when I mowed the lawn, suddenly avoided eye contact. Turns out Vanessa was on a quiet PR tour, telling friends, mutual acquaintances, even a few business contacts that I was emotionally abusive, controlling, and, my favorite, stealing her career out from under her. She didn't know that half the people she whispered to were either loyal to me or just opportunistic enough to pass her words along. And I didn't stop her. In fact, I let her talk. Because while she was busy rewriting the story in public, I was rewriting it in the places that actually mattered, her professional world. A few discreet phone calls to certain contacts, a couple of forwarded retreat photos with no commentary, and her next 3 potential listings as a real estate agent mysteriously evaporated. Clients didn't like messy. She was about to learn how lonely a phone can get when no one's calling you back. In early December, she received an embossed invitation in the mail, annual winter gala, hosted by the Ridge Hill Chamber of Commerce. Black tie, complimentary champagne, media coverage. It wasn't from me. It was from her former realtor friend Celeste, who'd been more than happy to make amends when I hinted at knowing about some of her own extracurricular activities. The bait was irresistible. Vanessa saw it as a chance to re-enter polite society, all smiles and silk, acting like the divorce was just a minor hiccup in an otherwise charmed life. She didn't realize I'd be there too, nor that I'd be bringing a date, someone she knew. The night of the gala, I arrived in a tailored charcoal suit, my arm linked with her old Pilates instructor, the one she used to gush about before abruptly firing after a disagreement. Funny thing about disagreements, they fade fast when both parties realize they dislike the same person. We worked the room with ease. I didn't avoid Vanessa. I let her see us. Let her watch people gravitate toward my table while her own sat half empty. Halfway through the evening, the chamber president took the stage to honor notable contributions to the community. And wouldn't you know it, my name was called. The applause was polite, but the real noise was in the room's shifting attention. Every camera turned toward me, and in the background, Vanessa sat frozen in her seat as the projector screen lit up with a slideshow, one compiled by the chamber's marketing team, using publicly available images. They weren't obscene, nothing that could get the chamber in trouble, but they told a very clear story. Her at retreats, her with the contractor, her smiling in the Ridge Hill lobby in that robe. All time-stamped, all sourced. The crowd went quiet. I gave my short speech, accepted the plaque, and stepped down, leaving her to drown in the stairs. 2 days later, she showed up at my door. No suit this time, just jeans, sneakers, and a look I hadn't seen in years. Panic. "You're ruining my life," she said. "No," I replied. "I'm just letting people see it." She tried to bargain, tried to threaten, even dangled the idea of amicable terms if I'd just stop. But here's the thing. She didn't understand that my revenge wasn't about rage anymore. It was about precision, and I was already done. I told her she'd hear from my lawyer with the final settlement terms. She'd get a modest payout, nothing more, in exchange for a full NDA that barred her from speaking my name in any capacity. Violated, and every remaining piece of evidence went public. She signed within 48 hours. The last time I saw her was at the bank, sliding the papers back across the desk, eyes down. No smile, no words, just the quiet of someone who finally understood they'd lost, not because they were outmatched in one fight, but because they were outplayed in every single round. When I walked out into the winter air, I didn't feel triumph. Just the kind of satisfaction you get from finishing a long, complicated job with clean edges and no loose ends. And somewhere, in a locked drawer in my office, the oak box still sits, full, heavy, and waiting. Not because I'll ever need it again, but because it's nice to remember exactly how far ahead you were when it mattered most.